Hello there, my dear listener. It's lovely once again to have you here on the Soul Sync podcast. Now, I know I've been promising you a mediumship episode for quite a long time, but this period, I tell you, it has been a big period of adjustment for me ever since I left work. And to be quite honest with you, I've been almost like spontaneously combusted at times. But one thing I tell you that has been unfolding at the rate of knots is my mediumship. And the spirit world, I have to tell you, are responsible in many ways for where I am at the moment in my life. They have a lot to answer for, and they have made themselves very much known recently to me because in readings, I have found that I'm in the power like never before, and it has really made me question my relationship with the present moment. That's right, the present moment. I used to try to be present. I used to try and sit in meditation. I used to try and quiet my mind, and quite a lot of the time I would achieve it. I would do great mediumship. I would do great readings, but I tell you, there is nothing like the present moment when you finally experience the present moment. And that is what I'm experiencing at the moment. And quite frankly, I am loving it, my darlings. So, in this episode today, I'm going to be talking to you about a number of different mediumship matters, including my recent trip to Amsterdam, which I must say was funny. I should have had a nap, quite frankly, before the evening of mediumship, after going to bed at 12 o'clock, before the 4 a.m. airport wake up, and then getting overexcited as soon as I got on the boat that I was staying on in Amsterdam, because it had a bicycle, and obviously there are bicycles everywhere in Amsterdam. I also had a really interesting remote viewing experience recently, which I'm going to talk all about and what remote viewing is on this very episode. So it's just you and me, an action-packed conversation all about mediumship, what's going on in my world, how I am interpreting my mediumship at the moment, and what that is looking like. And I must say, my dear listener, the only thing on my radar during these summer months right now is you, my darlings, Soul Sync, mediumship, and having a massive house sort out. So, yes, I look forward to talking to you. Well, hello, my darlings. It's lovely to be on with you. And I have to say, I've been meaning to record this episode now for quite a few days, but I've just been through such a whirlwind of emotions recently on so many different fronts. Since going through what is just such an intense period of stepping away from my business and saying to myself, right, I'm going to have a period now of 3 months off. Even just how tired I was, it just made me realize, firstly, how much of myself I gave to my business. But I've gone through a process that feels like it's kind of grieving the loss of my business, then the ego chipping in. Have I made the right decision? And it's just been a whirlwind of emotions. And even though at the very beginning when I left, I felt so empowered, over this last few weeks, I feel like I've been through such a cycle of emotions, wondering, have I done the right thing? The ego chipping in with unhelpful fear-based kind of thinking. And this is something you have to work on mindset. Even before I came to leave, I was so absolutely happy with a lot of the way that I'd got, my mindset into. But then, you give yourself one big change in life, and, this change I've had is absolutely massive. And, I've had to be really gentle with myself and really kind with myself. And even in recent weeks, I found myself saying, no, I should be doing more. I should be doing more mediumship. I should be doing more soul sync. And even though I want to do these things, I think I've just needed to take time. So I wanted to come on today to talk about what's going on with me. I'm feeling in a good place now. I'm feeling quite rested after weeks of rest now. And I feel that I'm now getting myself into a mindset of wanting to really think about, what's next for me? What am I going to do business wise? And I've had a lot of different ideas, but the one thing that's mainly going on in my life at the moment is my mediumship, is the work I'm doing on the Soul Sync. And it's been such an interesting time for me in terms of my mediumship, because I would always kind of feel like I was stepping between two worlds with my business. By day, speaking to lawyers, recruiting lawyers, and then by evening, turning my attention to speaking to spirit people and trying to develop that relationship. And like I've said in this podcast before, I've always had a bit of a tricky relationship with meditation and sitting and learning to quiet the mind. Firstly, because my mind is just so busy with ADHD brain, but especially with running my business, there was always something to be considered. And even when I was attempting to quiet the mind and give myself that time, it would be very hard and take me a long time to fully switch off. So I went over to Amsterdam last week, and I went over there for the purpose of doing an evening of platform mediumship. So a demonstration of mediumship. And, you know, a lot of people would choose to do that domestically. No, not me, not Jason. I chose to want to go to Amsterdam to do that as the opportunity presented itself. So basically last Thursday, I got the 7 a.m. flight from where I live in Bristol over to Amsterdam, and the demonstration of mediumship was that evening at 8:30. Now, most sensible people would have obviously got to Amsterdam and had a nap. Me being me, I got there on a houseboat that I'd stayed on a few years ago, and it's a beautiful houseboat. It's kind of like an absolute lad's pad, and I think the guy that rents it out, he had it before his wife, because you could tell it had Xbox on there. Everything boy could possibly want on a houseboat was there. Now, one of the things that was there was a push bike, and I decided as soon as I landed to go out and start cycling around Amsterdam. And whilst I was there, I didn't even realise I'd booked to go during World Gay Pride, which Madonna was at, and obviously I wanted to see that as well. So it was myself and Dennis, who's been on the podcast recently, who was doing the mediumship. So about 3 o'clock, I went over to where Dennis lives in that area and spent some time with him and his son. And anyway, the time for the mediumship came, and I was so excited. I kept feeling all day like I was having that build-up of energy in my stomach, almost like butterflies, but I knew it was the building of energy. Anyway, the time came to do the mediumship, and of course, I had a low blood sugar, being diabetic just before, so I was absolutely stuffing my face on as many cakes, Coke, and anything with sugar that I could possibly find. So as I started the demonstration, the format was, we decided energetically it would be good to do one contact, then the other one, then the other one, then the other one, rather than just doing 2 contacts each. I felt the energy would flow better by having that kind of variety. And obviously mediumship, the way I see it, it's very much a manipulation, a composing of energy. And when I'm doing my mediumship, I'm trying to manipulate that energy. I want to keep it high. I want to keep it vibrant. I want to keep the room uplifted, because when that energy is high, that power really feeds into the mediumship connection. Now, in the first, I was obviously quite nervous, but I was so excited at the same time. So when I went to go, the first contact that I had was so moving. And what I've noticed recently with my mediumship and my clairvoyance, and is I've really firstly noticed that it's become a lot more intense, the imagery. It's become a lot more clearer. It's become there's so much more feeling behind every single piece of evidence I'm getting. So in the first contact came through a male, and it was such a moving reading, and there was so much power behind it that the person that I was reading for was in absolute floods of tears. She was actually a medium herself, I found out afterwards. And I just felt the power of the contact. And I always try, when I'm doing a reading, not to allow myself to pre-link. What do I mean by pre-link? Well, I mean not consciously allowing the spirit person to be sort of coming into my awareness before I've started the mediumship. And I know everyone works differently, and many of you will be thinking, well, why is that? The reason why that is I found that I always work absolutely best when I'm in the moment. The problem when you pre-link and when you have a spirit person come through before you've actually started the reading, is you will then start acquiring information from the spirit person as they're giving it to you. And then you get this repertoire of information that they've just given you, pieces of information. And then as soon as you start the actual contact, you're reciting the information, which takes you out of the present moment spirit energy. So you can find in those instances, and I found myself, that what happens is, because I'm reciting back information that I was given a moment ago, in that moment I'm in my head, and the temptation and the danger sometimes, and especially with me and especially with people who are just starting out on their journey, you will find that you then try to place the information and you are interpreting the information. And that's one of the biggest problems of mediumship, honestly, is us trying to interpret what we get and place it. And the best readings are always, the most powerful readings are always when the medium is fully out of the way. Whenever I get a no in a reading, it's always because one of two reasons normally. Firstly, I have interpreted what the spirit world has given me, and I have taken it and tried to place it and in some kind of way try to work out what it is that I'm being given. Now, the problem with that is, when you were having a spirit contact come through, you are never, ever going to know what this information means, because it's not your story. You're never going to understand what these bits of information mean, because one, you don't know the person in front of you who you're reading for most of the time. And secondly, you don't know the spirit person. But, we all want to do a good job generally as mediums. We all want to do our best. And the difficulty is, it's a habit of a lifetime, I found, to try and get out of. So anyway, I did the first contact, and the first contact, it just moved me so much. And the second contact when I went was, I started to become aware, when Dennis was working, of this very jovial, very vibrant, very charismatic, very funny lady in the spirit world. And I was very conscious of, if a spirit person does come to me during it, I don't try and control it. I will allow them to come forward. I don't intentionally ever pre-link. I used to do that because it was down to confidence. I'd be sitting there, almost wanting to get a contact. So as soon as I'm up and running and going and I'm in the reading, then I'm sort of already got something. But what happened was, the lady came through very jovial, and I gave some initial bits of information, but no one in the room could take that woman at that time. And I knew I had that woman. I was 100% certain I had her, but no one could identify her. So then I was in that sticky situation of, do I stay with the lady or do I get another communicator? Now, in that moment, I got another communicator because no one could take her. And what I then got was a very, very emotional man coming through, wanting to speak to his daughter about how much he felt that he had struggled in his life, the impact that him being a dad had had on his daughter. And again, it was extremely moving. So after the reading, I'm after the demonstration, I'm standing there, and it turns out that two ladies could take the lady that I had, but I didn't give enough information for them to be able to identify her. So in, the lesson of that demonstration of that second contact was, I should have stayed with that lady, because I was absolutely certain that I'd had her. But, because of the situation of, nobody being able to take her in that moment, I pushed her away, so to speak, which sounds absolutely awful, but I did what I could in that moment. But I guess the moral to the story is, you learn from these experiences, and we can be so hard on ourselves, can't we? That, if something doesn't go the way that we wanted, we can really beat ourselves up. But that is the process of learning, especially with things like mediumship. You don't really learn a huge amount from the yeses sometimes. Yes, if you do a really good reading, you will draw things from it. But it's always the no's. It's always the things that may surprise you and not necessarily go the way that you would have liked, that you learn from. And I feel that one of the biggest turning points for me has been to understand that by taking the pressure off myself and learning to embrace the no's. The no's are great because it means you're getting feedback. And sometimes it can be something so simple why you get a no. It could just be that you have said something in the wrong way. I remember distinctly when I did a reading recently and I said to a lady, oh, I believed that this man used to smoke cigarettes. And at first she said no. And then I went back to the spirit person and they used the word fags. And then she went, oh yeah, actually, that's triggered something in my mind. But I feel that, I used to go through this thing when I would have a no, it would almost like kind of stop me in my tracks in a sense, where I would then go, oh, and I would dip out the energy of the spirit person because I would go straight in my head. So I also now, when I'm developing or doing readings, I see it much more as an experiment now. And it's a little trick I've had in my mind by kind of calling it an experiment. It takes the pressure off. It also allows me to kind of be in a mindset that, yes, of course I need to experiment. Of course I need to keep developing. And, for me to become the best medium that I can possibly be, I need to accept that I'm always trying to experiment, to essentially work out how the faculties work. So I must admit, in hindsight with Amsterdam, I was so pleased with how I went, and it's so invigorated me to want to go out there now and do more platform work. And I felt in so much service. And for me, I my heart felt so full afterwards, because it's such a responsibility at the end of the day doing mediumship. And it's a responsibility that I take really seriously. Your words can have such a big impact on people, and to have moved someone in such a way and to have absolutely relished in the power, I was so moved by it that it touched me for absolutely the rest of the trip. And I've come back now and I've actually booked in to do another 2 nights of platform mediumship in the coming months. So, if you do happen to know, my darlings, of any venues that might like to, have me come along and do some mediumship, do let me know, because I'm really wanting to continue to develop what is my passion, which is platform mediumship. So I have to admit, I really feel that I've also turned a corner in recent times by truly surrendering to the spirit world. And that process has been ongoing for many months. And I have to say that the spirit world is so responsible for the current situation I'm in, because they prompted me to leave my business. I did say to them at the time, is this the right decision? And I was met with a certain stance and energy that my granddad gave me, who, as you know, is a guide of mine. And he did one of those looks with his arms crossed, where my granddad was an extremely jovial man, but when he would have a certain stance, a certain look and a certain way of being, I would absolutely listen to that. And he prompted me to do what I did. And the spirit world have really been influencing me a hell of a lot lately. But I've been absolutely blown away by the vividness of the mediumship that I'm getting. And I even in the last few days have started to notice that I'm getting some level of clairaudience, because it's almost like I heard a couple of days ago the spirit world say to me, get on with what you want to do and just be yourself. And it was almost like I wasn't hearing it externally, but it was like I was hearing it within the eardrum, which sounds really bizarre, but I guess this also makes the point that no, you will never know how another medium necessarily experiences the spirit world. And I fully believe that we all have our own way of working. At the end of the day, the way the spirit world communicates to us as mediums is through our thoughts, it's through our memory bank, it's through our emotions that we attach to experiences, it's through our belief, it's through our collective consciousness. And the spirit world have the ability to work telepathically, to understand your thoughts, to understand, what's happened in your life, to be able to look into your soul, into your consciousness. And I will be honest with you, nothing fails to amaze me more than the intelligence of the spirit world and how they work. And I wanted to tell you actually an interesting story just on that very note, which I think makes this point very well. Now, I develop my mediumship in many different ways. As you know, I do go on courses, and one thing I do is a once a month mentorship with a tutor of mine. And we did an exercise the other day called remote viewing. Now, I've never done remote viewing before, but essentially the exercise was that we needed to work with another medium, and the other medium was to get a building in their mind that they know very, very, very well. Then the exercise was they need to project into their consciousness that building, and the other medium needs to then give information that they get about that building. Now, I work with this lovely lady, and the first thing that I started to get as I did the exercise, as I started to move into expanding my awareness, I started to get something which was very interesting, which was there was a feeling that there was a lot of death.
We'll be right back.
If you're interested in mediumship, I'd love to invite you to something a little bit special. On Friday, the 28th of August at 7:30 p.m. UK time, I'm hosting a free online evening of mediumship with the wonderful Nicola Farmer. It'll be an evening of spirit communication, love, laughter, and connection. It's completely free, live on Zoom, and absolutely everybody is welcome. You'll find all the joining details in the episode notes, and I'd love to see you there. Associated with this particular property. Now, I knew that the death wasn't necessarily like very negative, like it wasn't like there was kind of a murder or something in that house, because I had a really warm, almost like celebratory feel to this particular property. Anyway, I started to outline what the outside of the building looked like, and every last detail I got about the outside of the building, the grandness of the house, the colour of the house, the way that the doorway was, the arches alongside the door was all correct. Anyway, the spirit world then dropped into my awareness, the movie My Girl. Now, I love that movie. It's like one of my favourite movies of all time because it just pulls on my heartstrings every single time. Now, I'm sure a lot of you know the movie My Girl. It's a VHS classic. But if you are a younger listener to the Soul Sync, I know I have a much older demographic because I do know that my listeners, you're a lovely lot, international, across many countries. But, you know, I do know that I appeal to a slightly older audience, but it's a film about a young girl who grew up in a funeral home, and that's where she lived. Now, all of a sudden, I said to the person, but I'm sensing that you grew up in a funeral home because I'm getting My Girl, the film My Girl. And she said to me, you are absolutely right. I did grow up in a funeral home, and people used to always say the movie My Girl to me. Now, I went on to then get the floor plan layout, to then get the colour of the chairs, how the chairs were laid out came through, which was correct. I then got exactly where the bodies would be prepared, what that looks like, the relationship between her and her dad. And honestly, the amount of information I got, it absolutely blew my mind in terms of what is possible, how much we can do as human beings, what our potential is, and but, you know, how we can limit ourselves by what we believe is possible. And as you know, I've spoken about this recently. I am such a big fan of trying to encourage people to do mediumship their way. And my granddad came through about 6 months ago, and he said to me, Jason, you were not designed to be in boxes. You were designed to do things your way. And it's really got me wanting to look into doing mediumship in ways that really allows people to see the magic and the awe of the spirit world, because the spirit world move me so much in terms of what they do to assist, how they're always there when we need them, how intelligent they are, how strong that bond of love is, and how that love is eternal and it never dies. It doesn't leave someone when they physically pass. And I've spoken to so many mediums who have got such strong relationships with their loved one in the spirit world, which shows that love exists. It is timeless. It is bound by no physical location, distance. And it just blows my mind. But I feel that one of the things with mediumship is, and I feel that a lot of the time, this is why, churches are quiet, and it needs to appeal to a younger audience, mediumship. But I feel part of the problem is the fact that, there can be more magic brought in by the unlimited power and intelligence of the spirit world. Because I look back to a lot of the work of our pioneers, and recently, I know I have said on the podcast before that I have some limiting beliefs when it comes to reading books, but I've really started to understand that is the belief of old Jason and new Jason as I go through this period now of cutting cords, of looking at what no longer serves me, looking at the life that I want, and realizing that to get the life I want, I need to step into how I would feel, because to manifest that, I need to be within that vibration. So I'm trying to look really carefully during this transition period that I'm on at the moment about how I view certain things. But I wanted to talk about the remote viewing, because I was even speaking to a medium friend of mine the other day about some incredible things she did in terms of telekinesis. And the other day she put a pound on a wall, one of my friends, and it stuck there because in her mind, she believed that was possible. And the pound is still stuck on the wall energetically. But she went to do it a second time and couldn't recreate that happening. Why is that? Because there was then a pressure and an expectation for it to happen a certain time. And even as I go into this new period now, in terms of what I'm going to be doing next, I understand that I need to be just really looking carefully and allowing life to flow, and understanding that, when you do get those unhelpful thoughts chip in, I know that my soul knows what it needs to do. And there's so much beauty in just taking that time, taking that moment of stillness to sort of connect to yourself, to allow your higher consciousness to kind of speak to you. So I must say it's been such an exciting period for me, and I do really feel so excited about what the future holds for my mediumship. In the weeks ahead, I'm going to be doing as much mediumship as I possibly can do, because once it gets to September, I'm going to start thinking about what's next. So I feel so excited about mediumship, if you can understand and tell that. But it's just been such a journey of just discovery for me, and I just feel so passionate about the work that I'm doing with the spirit world, and just to see the difference is night and day in my mediumship. So I would really encourage people to have a go at remote viewing, because it blew my mind at what was possible, and so many people within the group at the time picked up such wonderful things, wonderful information from those exercises. So I really feel that I want to bring the magic of the spirit world more and more and more and more to people. And I do keep thinking back to how I used to be a professional magician at 16, amongst my many jobs in my catch me if you can type life/career. And I really want to inject magic and bring magic and mediumship together, because mediumship is magic. It's so magical that we can put just a thought out there, and in no more than a thought and a single intention, we can have a spirit person with us by our side in a click of a fingers. But, the spirit world are all around us, whether you choose to understand, believe that, and know that, and you may be on your own journey, but the spirit world aren't up there. They're not, in some place up floating in the clouds. They are all around us. And, that's, I think, one of the unhelpful things about assuming that we go back home, assuming that we go to heaven, assuming that we go to some other place. When we pass away, yes, we're going into a world that is non-physical, that is just pure consciousness, that is just pure God. But ultimately, but the spirit world are around us all the time. And I know that because so many of the messages that I've brought through recently for people really proves that, because the spirit world come through sometimes with so much evidence of what's going on in that person's life. Why do they do that? They do that to prove that they are around. They do that to prove that they are watching. They do that to prove that, you know, that love is all around. And at the end of the day, mediumship should be healing at its core, because that is what mediumship is all about. So I'm going to be doing a few episodes in the coming weeks to really delve deep into more technical aspects of mediumship. I do want to do a walk with sort of exercise for you, which allows you to feel the presence of your spirit guide. So stay tuned. I'm going to do that in the next couple of weeks. But I just wanted to come on today to have a little chat with you. I hope you're doing well and keeping hydrated in England, if you're listening in England. But, you know, just to see what's going on at the moment with heat waves, forest fires, you know, we're just absolutely trashing this planet. And I really, you know, hope that we can turn back the dial in some way, because we need to get back to living and appreciating and respecting the world that we live in. You know, it's almost like if the warning bells and indicators, you know, were going off, they're certainly, the sirens are sounding now, that's for sure. But as always, my darlings, it's lovely to talk to you. I've got some really exciting guests coming in the coming weeks as well. So I really look forward to sharing some really wonderful conversations with you. But until next time, my darlings, I will speak to you soon.